Hello everybody, Tornado Soup here, and happy Halloween! Since his first appearance in 1939's Detective Comics number 27, Batman has acted as a sort of darker counterpart to DC's sunnier heroes such as Superman. As such, many of the Dark Knight's enemies have touched on the scarier elements of what goes on in Gotham City. And while there are certainly plenty of well-known, bone-chilling Batman villains, there are also many that people may not think of at first. So today, in honor of Halloween, let's answer the question: who is Batman's scariest foe? The first obvious choice is probably the Joker. The juxtaposition of an innocent clown visage and a bloodthirsty killer's attitude can be more than just a little horrifying, and is often used to great effect. Decades before Pennywise the Dancing Clown graced the pages of Stephen King's It, the Joker was already adding to his terrifyingly high body count. Between the spine-tingling laugh, his angular, jackal-like features, and blood-red smile, the Clown Prince of Crime is no pushover in this competition. The Joker's gone through many iterations in the comics, from small-time murderer in his earliest appearances to an essentially harmless prankster in the 1950s and 60s, to the unhinged madman we know today. This, too, adds to the clown's fear factor, as he is an ever-adapting character. If you stumble into him on the streets of Gotham, he's just as likely to shoot you down as he is to give you $100 and a handshake. This unpredictable behavior can only make him scarier. But that doesn't mean Joker wins right away. There are plenty more candidates to go through. Take Scarecrow, for instance, otherwise known as Dr. Jonathan Crane. Every ability he has is derived from spreading fear. He studies it, worships it. His only real disadvantage in this competition is, of course, the fact that the fear he spreads is usually based around the use of a fictional fear toxin, which does admittedly take away from the grounded sort of psycho that Joker is. However, Crane isn't limited to his fear toxin. In a two-part story from Detective Comics number 835 to 836, Crane begins to feel like the toxin is a crutch. So he goes on a killing spree in Gotham, escaping Arkham by forcing a nearby inmate to kill himself simply through speaking. Crane was able to drive the man so deeply insane and dive so deeply into his mind that he simply broke him like a toy. And this was a man who was a fellow psychopath and killer. Scarecrow then proceeded to spread fear across Gotham by killing at random, making every citizen a possible target. And this was all without a single dose of fear toxin. There's also the crossover event Blackest Night. In this story, the Guardians of the Universe, creators of the Green Lantern rings, forge temporary new rings, one for each of the 7 Corps, so that they can defeat the embodiment of death, Necron. And as one of the Corps, the Sinestro Corps, is based on the emotion of fear, that ring found its way to none other than Scarecrow himself. Out of everyone on the planet, the ring judged Crane the person best suited to use it. And the rings of the Lanterns have a pretty good track record, which makes them a good source for information. This would mean that Scarecrow is probably the scariest person on the planet, if not in the universe. Then there are other villains, like Killer Croc, who lurks in the sewers of Gotham, waiting to grab any Gothamite unlucky enough to find themselves nearby. And from there, well, Croc has been known to have an appetite. There's also Clayface, who can shift into whatever horrifying form he likes. And that's not all. In his very first appearance, Basil Karlo, the original Clayface, was no more than an ordinary man. In the origin given in Detective Comics number 40, he was a B-list actor who sought revenge when he learns that a classic horror film in which he starred was being remade without him. Even in 1940, this guy was tired of reboots. He slowly and systematically began killing the cast and crew, using the moniker of the creature from the film, Clayface. It also doesn't hurt that Karlo was reportedly named after horror legends Boris Karloff and Basil Rathbone. Naturally, a character so deeply rooted in horror movies has to be placed pretty high in this competition. Clayface is also a rather horrifying foe, just not for the same reasons as the others. Instead of being visually scary, the story of Harvey Dent is one of tragedy that shows the true, fragile nature of the human mind. Where there was once Gotham's White Knight, there is now a dangerously disturbed man with a broken psyche. His actions are never particularly haunting, but the idea that such a good man could turn into this is nothing short of bone-chilling. And it reminds us all that we may just be one small slip into the abyss of insanity. Not every scary villain is as well known, though. Dr. Death, for instance, is practically body horror incarnate, especially in his New 52 iteration, yet is mostly unheard of among casual fans. A scientist named Carl Helfern attempted to create a bone serum that would counteract human weaknesses. However, he was let go from Wayne Enterprises, forcing him to test it on himself. This gave him a disturbing skeleton-like visage and the ability to force his victims' bones to grow uncontrollably. Their bones crack and bend, bursting through their flesh as blood pours out and their bodies distort. With a gangly figure, dagger-like claws, and teeth reminiscent of those of a shark, Dr. Death shouldn't be discounted here. He was also Batman's first real supervillain, and while this early version wasn't nearly as horrifying, it just shows how long fear and death have lurked over the Batman mythos. Professor Pig is also a haunting figure, first appearing in Batman issue number 666. Pig's actions are more than just a little disturbing. Known for kidnapping innocent people that he sees as needing to be fixed, Pig takes these victims and tries to perfect them, torturing, mutilating, and brainwashing them until their transformation is complete and they become Dolltrons, mindless, zombie-like beings that do Pig's bidding. As a cracked mirror version of the Greek myth, as well as George Bernard Shaw's stage play, and, by extension, the musical My Fair Lady, the true horror in Pig's actions may lie in his quest for perfection. Either way, between Pig's actions and the haunting origins of the Dolltrons, this is one professor you definitely don't want to have in class. Similar to Professor Pig, Dollmaker finds innocent people, usually women, and kidnaps them. However, instead of trying to perfect his victims, he kills them. That's it. Oh, and then he'll cut their skin off, using the bits that he gathers to make dolls. With the right pieces of skin, he can make dolls into the likeness of nearly anybody. He's also known for cutting the Joker's face off, at the clown's behest, of course. He was also played by Weird Al Yankovic in the animated movie Batman vs. Robin, while having appearances in different forms in both Arrow and Gotham, both of which are just as disturbing as the comic incarnation. Oh, and then there's the Calendar Man, otherwise known as Julian Day. Although his original incarnation, first appearing in Detective Comics number 259, was easily mockable, he would eventually be transformed into something far more sinister. In Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale's iconic story, Batman: The Long Halloween, Calendar Man was reinvented as a murderer who struck with a holiday theme. A classic killer if there ever was one. Days like the Hannibal Lecter of holidays, making days of joy days of bloodshed, and casting a long and dangerous shadow over them for everyone living in Gotham. The fear this villain spreads is sure to last all year long.
Boo. Funny thing, Halloween and Arkham. It seems redundant here. Within these walls, the monsters are on display year-round. Of course, there was that one year Joker led a breakout on All Hallows Eve. What a wonderful night. Costumed revelers innocently partying alongside killers and fiends. Of course, the real screams came when it was time to unmask. Trick or treat.
Another foe deserving a spot in this competition is a man without a name. A killer who worked at Gotham's Potter's Field for years, using it as a cover to kill and hide the bodies. He went on like this for an unknown amount of time, avoiding all attention. As his debut story in 2014's Batman number 34 shows, it took possibly hundreds of deaths before Batman even caught wind of the situation and put a stop to it. The thought that there could be a killer stalking the streets outside your window, waiting, lurking in the shadows, that's sure to give one goosebumps, especially in the silence of the night when no one would notice if you were to disappear, until it was all too late. In the end, despite all the colorful costumes and dangerous acts, only one name comes to mind when I think of the scariest Batman villain: James Gordon Jr. Okay, so he doesn't exactly sound super scary. He doesn't even have a moniker or a costume. Really, he's just a regular guy. He's even the son of Police Commissioner Gordon, so how bad can he really be? Well, if you've read Batman Black Mirror, then you know. I love that story a lot, so I don't want to get into spoilers too much. Just go read it, and you'll see what I'm talking about. You'll see that Junior's normalness is what really makes him so scary. He's an absolute sociopath with no empathy whatsoever. He tortures people in horrific ways, tearing them limb from limb, disemboweling them, and keeping them alive. He stalks his victims like prey. He's a traditional serial killer for sure, and his lack of gimmick makes him seem all the more real. And when it comes to characters like this, real is definitely scary. The only thing scarier is a YouTuber asking you to like and subscribe. Oh, and the bell. The bell's pretty creepy too. There's a ton of other characters that I didn't even get into. From Victor Zsasz, to Mad Hatter, to Man-Bat, to the white masked socialites that make up the Court of Owls, Gotham has no shortage of characters that can give you the creeps. But we don't have all day, so I didn't want to delve into all of them. If you've got a favorite creepy villain, why don't you tell me about them in the comments below? If there's enough, then maybe I'll do a follow-up to them sometime in the future. That's all I've got for now. Thank you for watching. Hopefully, I'll see you next time. Have a great day. Have a great Halloween. And goodbye, everybody.